Pat Leimbach, sister of John Penton, passed away in January of 2013, following a lifetime of celebrating and sharing her role as an Ohio farm wife. Mrs. Leimbach authored 3 books, wrote articles which were syndicated nationwide, and traveled extensively as a speaker, sharing animated readings of her humorous articles at conferences and banquets all over the United States and throughout Canada. While the heart of Mrs. Leimbach's work and the root of her success lay in ruminations of her life on a working farm, it is the stories of her brother John for which members of the Penton Owners Group best remember her. Please take a few minutes to enjoy this wonderful perspective on the business side of Brother John, as could only be told by a member of the Penton family. Mrs. Pat Leimbach at the 2005 Penton Owners Group Christmas Party.
Nights on his account. So I always try to dredge through this material to bring you something new about John. But as I said, you just have to, some of it, you just have to read it over again. And I'm not going to start with my typical farm wife thing. I am a farm wife, and I've made a reputation speaking for farm groups, and usually I share farm material, and that's what I usually start with, but I'm getting bored with it after 30 years. So I'm going on to Big John here. This is probably the significant thing that I have written about my brother John, and I wrote it back in 1974. Nobody really takes you seriously when you mention motorcycling. It's a camp little pastime for the very mod or the immature or the insane. But with my family, the Pentons, motorcycling is capitalized and it's serious business. So on holidays, we sit at the feet of Brother John or Papa John or Uncle John, Big John, according to your relationship, and we listen to the gospel according to the motorcycle business. Starting about 10 years ago, as a folk hero among motorcycle endurance racers, Brother John employed his talents as mechanic, machinist, innovator, and go-getter, and with considerable help from his brothers, developed a winning motorcycle that bears his name. It's manufactured in Austria, then imported and distributed nationwide by the import firm John and Brother Ted built. Their motorcycle business involves the convoluted worlds of industry, economics, law, transportation, labor relations, public relations, international relations, and sport. I personally find the whole thing fascinating, so I listen and I ask questions and I ponder the world as Big John discovers and shares it, tempering my final judgments on the basis of my own experience. It is John and the international business that intrigues me the most. As an importer, he does a lot of poking around in out-of-the-way corners of Europe. A lot of bargaining, bickering, shouting, negotiating, socializing, discovering. As a negotiator, Johnny is no Henry Kissinger. He is, in fact, one small, solid lump of incongruity. Short and stocky, looking very much like, what else? An old motorcycle hero. He stomps on and off of airplanes, weighted heavily with briefcases full of gear shift levers and assorted spare parts, and now and then he tells me his sister's books. He's not particularly tactful, diplomatic, or skilled in language. But in the way that candor and honesty translate, he is altogether disarming and enjoys great success. He and his Austrian factory owner rant and rave and tear their hair in separate languages. They don't speak for a day and then fall on each other's necks. Shake hands and part like brothers, business mission accomplished. Last month, John did 7 countries in 9 days, and so on the 4th of July, he was still bubbling with his experiences. When Johnny encounters some unique person, item, adventure, he brings it back like a shiny pearl in the palm of his hand to share and delight over, as though no one else ever found anything to compare. And I am convinced every time. Last week I was sitting in, and this is quoting John, last week I was sitting in a restaurant in Venice. He says this, sitting there straddling a picnic bench as he tells it, wearing work clothes, pant legs rolled to his knees, white socks drooping. It seems an unlikely story. And they brought out this steaming plastic bag. They split it open, and there lay these two ugly steamed fish with their sunken eyes, their slimy-looking skin, some big delicacy. I thought I'd vomit. Well, did you eat it? I asked. Heck no. I had a club sandwich, like over to Kenny King's. That's Big John in Venice. Once it was a castle ruin on the Danube he'd found and thought everybody should see. Once a wonderful little boot factory on an obscure back street in a tiny Italian village. Another time, a wooden shoe factory he'd found in a ski village. Once, a parts factory built into an abandoned palace. A suit works in Germany. Sewing machines in Sweden, and electrics marvel in Madrid. This trip he'd been in Denmark, and lo and behold, touring the farms of Brother Bill's Danish in-laws. He had 7 wonderful pigs. He had seen wonderful pigs bred with 2 extra ribs. Once he fell asleep on a train, missed his stop, and departed in the middle of a place in Yugoslavia where he took great pains to explain to the station agent that he neither had nor needed any diners. He wasn't hungry. It finally came through to John that the agent was talking about the Yugoslavian unit of money. Using his well-developed language of pantomime, he got himself on a train in the opposite direction and someplace caught a remote airplane back to civilization. Non-drinking, non-smoking, no-nonsense Papa John does not fit the picture of hail fellow well met. I can see him nodding in boredom in a Belgian beer hall, his eyes glazing over, his face in semi-consciousness, wishing he were under an eiderdown, dreaming of 6 a.m. and another exciting day in the motorcycle business. The Europeans forgive him his dreary cop-outs because his dedication to that business is their bread and butter, and they esteem him so highly. One frigid day last winter, I caught sight of Uncle John at the local motorcycle track, bundled in his raunchy brown stocking cap and a ratty old ski jacket held together at the front with a safety pin. I recognized it as one of my husbands that I'd thrown away 2 years earlier. Nobody would have pegged him for the sometime international businessman sitting at a polished mahogany table in Vienna, flanked by interpreters and bankers and tax lawyers and accountants and stodgy European business executives. I think perhaps the reason Big John gets along so well abroad is that he's the most uncommonly common guy to come across from the States since Benjamin Franklin.